and the central bankers really guided us away from it at the same time that they're buying it hand over fist. So I would really say, now look, I've been studying currency since 1987. And at ITM Trading, we have a strategy that we look at historical patterns and therefore what is the next most likely.
In the world of finance, things are about to get real. Silver prices are poised for a massive shift, and gold isn't far behind. But before you hit the panic button, there's something you need to do with your precious metals. Lynette Zang, the queen of all things gold and silver, is here to break it down.
In your possession, right? ETFs, all that kind of garbage. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. That is just a trust. So you need physical in your possession, which is real money at a point where it should be now with inflation, obvious to everybody that central bankers have destroyed the purchasing power value of the currency. So that's why you have to have it. As far as the amount goes, that part depends on your personal level of comfort and what you're willing to lose and what you're wanting to protect. And then beyond that, do you want to get in a position to not just survive what we're going through, which is a currency reset, social, economic, and financial, but do you want to be in a position to take advantage of it?
Lynette Zang, an economist that has been involved in the markets at some level since 1964, as a student, banker, stockbroker, and precious metals and currency analyst, is saying that governments and banks have been telling us not to worry about gold and silver while secretly stocking up on them. But she thinks we should have some too because they're real and you can hold them in your hand, unlike some investments like ETFs.
Additionally, when I'm talking about value, because that's really what you want to know, where is it going to go, right? So what's the true value of an ounce of gold? That's also what I call the fundamental value, because one thing I can guarantee you is at some point, all assets go to fundamental value. That's not complicated. What gets a little more complicated and a little more nuanced is knowing how to determine what that value is. Because you can't listen to the guys on Wall Street to tell you what that value is. They have an agenda. So since gold is real money, good money, and dollars, yuan, yen, whatever, is government-based money, the way to know how much this would go to, an ounce of gold would go to during a reset, I do it really simply because I'm not going to get you to the penny and I don't care anyway.
She's saying that because of the way governments have been handling money, the value of our cash is going down. So, having gold and silver can help protect our savings from losing value. The whole financial system needs a big change, and she doesn't trust things like stocks or digital currencies. We should pay attention to how much our money can buy us. If prices keep going up because of inflation, she's worried our cash could become worthless. In simpler terms, Lynette Zang explains that to estimate the potential value of gold during a currency reset, you can look at the total amount of debt created by governments. This debt represents the currency created through loans and bonds. By comparing this debt to the total amount of gold in the world, you can get an idea of how much each unit of gold could be worth.
When you go to the grocery store to buy the food, it's harder to hide, right? And they've really shown their hand. So to say that the Federal Reserve is trying to fight the inflation that they actually created by all of this money printing is preposterous, because the only tool that they really have are interest rates. And, you know, back when we shifted in the early 70s, and I was alive then, so I remember that. You were a thought, maybe, but no, you know, but when you live through that, and I was in my late teens, so I wasn't really fully aware of what was going on, but I was certainly old enough to get that experience. And we transitioned from a quasi-gold-backed system to a pure debt-based system and handed over control of inflation to the central banks. And I look at history a little different than a lot of the history books.
She believes that individuals can apply the same principles to their own finances. Zang argues that everyone, whether a government or an individual, needs to follow the basic laws of economics. She warns against relying too much on fiat currency, which can lose its value due to inflation and government policies.
Than a demand-driven inflation, and that makes it different too. I mean, how many cars do you need? This is not about buying more cars. This is now about putting food on the table versus buying Netflix. And in the UK, I just saw an article today. I didn't read it through yet, but it said something about more people had disconnected from streaming services in the first quarter, and it's because they're being pressed by inflation. So
yeah, I mean, Netflix is almost $20 now in Canada, so you can definitely feel it everywhere. So I feel like I can guess what you might say, but I have to ask. So we've had one interest rate hike from the Fed so far this year. They are telling us that we're going to see more. They're talking also about balance sheet reduction. What do you see coming? What do you think they will actually be able to accomplish?
Zang addresses concerns about inflation and the rising cost of living. She acknowledges that while short-term market fluctuations can affect the price of gold, its long-term value remains relatively stable. Over thousands of years, an ounce of gold has consistently held its purchasing power, even as prices for other goods and services have changed. She explains that central banks try to control inflation to maintain stable prices. However, their definition of price stability focuses more on keeping wages low, rather than ensuring the cost of living doesn't rise too quickly. This approach benefits governments and corporations by limiting their expenses, but it can hurt workers who struggle to keep up with rising prices.
And this is a global issue, so we're headed into a hyperinflationary depression, which is what makes having this in your possession, along with food, water, energy, security. This is your barterability. This is your wealth preservation, community, and shelter. You have to be prepared to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible. And of all those things that I've listed, community is probably the single most important one because it takes a village, right? I mean, I'm pretty talented, but I can't do everything. There's only 24 hours in a day. And so to grow your food and to do all of that, I'm fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with a community that can help in all these different.
Zang notes that recent increases in inflation have led to calls for higher wages. While some workers have seen pay raises, they often don't keep up with the pace of inflation. This mismatch between wages and prices can erode confidence in the economy and the currency. She urges people to prepare for potential economic challenges by ensuring they have essential resources like food, water, and shelter. Additionally, she recommends diversifying investments to include tangible assets like gold and silver, which can retain their value during times of uncertainty.
A women's movement. Well, we had the suffragettes in the start of this experiment. We had women's lib in the 70s, and we have the Me Too movement. Civil rights is another thing that's cropped up. We had that back in the 70s. We have that again. So, and markets severely overvalued, this irrational exuberance, and we're seeing the breakdown. So to be perfectly honest with you, and if you look at the new reports that have just come out from the IMF and the World Bank and the BIS, I'm going to be reading the BIS later today, frankly, what you're seeing is they're telling you how close we are. And if there is another black swan event, which rising interest rates could certainly cause a systemic event that they would not be able to come in with their funny money and fix. So we're very, 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 very close. I mean, let me tell you, I'm very grateful. See, the system died in 2008.
So, it's important to keep some gold and silver as a backup in case our money loses its value, because it's a smart move to protect our savings and be ready for any big changes in the economy. We hope you have a clearer picture on what to do with your silver and gold after Lynette's insights. Remember, knowledge is power, especially in this financial climate. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more hard-hitting financial news you can use.